Now to a case that has gripped Nova Scotians for nearly 30 years. A 17-year-old boy found dead in New Waterford. His cause of death in dispute. This summer, a lawyer hired by the family of Clayton Miller claimed they had new evidence. They released an interview from a man who says he was part of the Cape Breton ground search and rescue team at the time of the boy's death. And he says the place where the body was found was searched the day before, and Miller's body was not there. Well, today, Nova Scotia's police watchdog released its report on the matter, and it says the evidence does not support the story.
The trouble is that the Millers themselves testified at the fatality inquiry in September of 1990, only a few months after young Mr. Miller's death, and said that they were not aware where their son was until the Sunday when his body was found. So there's no way that they could have passed along any information to the police that there should be a search done in that area. It's incompatible with the known facts to believe that anybody went out to search.
Now, Ron McDonald says the evidence is clear. Clayton Miller died of hypothermia. And as far as he's concerned, the case is closed. But these findings are not sitting well with Clayton Miller's parents, who have long contended the then New Waterford Police Force had something to do with their son's death. They spoke today with the CBC's Gary Mansfield.
I'm not surprised at all.
Clayton Miller's parents don't believe CERT's latest report into their son's death. On May 6, 1990, police found the 17-year-old dead in an area known as the Nest in New Waterford. In July, New Waterford resident Brian McDonald gave a statement saying he led a ground search and rescue effort to find Clayton Miller the day before in the same area, and no body was found. The Millers questioned why the agency did not interview McDonald.
He had already said he doesn't mind being questioned at all by the authorities to tell what he knows.
CERT says emergency search and rescue records for 1990 show no evidence of a search in New Waterford on that day, and says new information in Clayton Miller's case is not reliable.
How can you say somebody's not credible when you haven't even met the man? Jervy and I haven't even met the man. We haven't even spoken to him. We can only go by what was put on videotape, and the man must be very credible if he was the coordinator for the search.
The Millers are now asking the provincial justice minister to step in. Gary Mansfield, CBC News, New Waterford.
We'll get to Kalen in just a moment, but first, Clayton Miller, a 17-year-old boy who died following a police raid on a teenage drinking party in New Waterford. You remember the story. Well, now the police watchdog says the new information surrounding the death of Clayton Miller back in 1990 is not reliable, and says there is no reason to further investigate the teen's death. Ron McDonald is with the Serious Incident Response Team. Sir, why do you say that Clayton Miller was not killed?
Well, I say Clayton Miller was not killed to repeat what was contained in our report of 2015, because he didn't have any injuries. The medical doctors at the time and every subsequent doctor since has told us that he didn't have any injuries that caused his death and that he died from hypothermia. And in addition, the evidence has demonstrated to us that the police had no contact with Clayton Miller and therefore couldn't have had anything to do with his death.
What about the evidence, the new evidence that the family's lawyer brought forward, suggesting that Miller's body was not lying in the creek bed the day before his body was discovered, suggesting something was up there?
Yeah, so we've analyzed that. We've done an objective analysis of that. We haven't gone back and spoken to the individual because he's not well, but we have his best evidence already. So we've taken his best evidence from the interview done by the Miller's lawyer, and we've looked at that. And that suggested that he got a call from the police saying he should go and search for Clayton Miller in the Nest area, in the Brook area. The trouble is that the Millers themselves testified at the fatality inquiry in September of 1990, only a few months after young Mr. Miller's death, and said that they were not aware where their son was until the Sunday when his body was found. So there's no way that they could have passed along any information to the police that there should be a search done in that area. It's incompatible with the known facts to believe that anybody went out to search. In addition, the police the only information they had received from the Millers earlier in the day was, could you keep an eye out for him? The Millers, in their evidence, again demonstrate they didn't give any information to the police about where he was because they didn't know themselves. And the first official recorded call was after 6 p.m. in the afternoon that the police received. So they couldn't have called out a search team that started their work at 4:30 in the afternoon. Simple point is, that evidence is not credible. It doesn't match the known facts. It didn't happen.
Can you fully discount this gentleman's evidence, though, if you haven't talked to him directly yourself?
Absolutely. If we went to talk to him, the only thing that could happen was he's either going to say the same thing, or we're going to challenge his evidence and he's going to step away from it or recant his evidence. So instead of that, because the man is elderly and somewhat ill, we made a determination that it wasn't in the public interest for us to go speak to him. We have the best his evidence can be right now, and we've looked at that. He says there was a search. Well, the trouble is, the Cape Breton Search and Rescue Team, there are no records to back him up on that. The Nova Scotia Emergency Measures Organization has records of searches done back in 1990. There's no search having been done then. That, together with the impossibility that they would search in an area coincidentally where the body was found the next day when nobody knew where he was, makes it very clear to us that this, unfortunately, is another one of the stories that have been created in this circumstance, Tom, that simply do not match the known facts. And we have had many of them over the last 27 years.
So what is your message for the family and the family supporters after this second CERT investigation into the handling of this case?
Well, this wasn't an investigation. We were just reviewing the information that came out in July to determine whether we should do any further reinvestigation.
Well, it's your second look at some aspect of it. What's your message for the family?
Well, to be fair, Tom, the family doesn't listen to our messages. We've already sent a very strong message that their son was not killed by anyone. We've already sent a very strong message based on objective known facts that he couldn't have died from any injury because he didn't have any injury. We sent a strong message that he died from hypothermia. We sent a strong message that there's absolutely no evidence that suggests that he had any contact with any police. In spite of those obvious facts, and they're obvious when you review the evidence, the family and their supporters have insisted that he was killed by police. I can't do anything about their beliefs. What we can do is assure the public of Nova Scotia that as a third-party, independent, objective organization who have looked at this as closely as anybody has ever looked at it, that Mr. Miller didn't die from violence from anybody. He died from, unfortunately, passing out outside and from the cold.
Mr. McDonald, thanks for talking to us about this.
No problem. My pleasure.